Greetings, viewers. I have some special limited edition pens to show you today. This is the Mabie Todd Concerto and Majestic. So these pens they bear the Mabie Todd and Company brand name on them. Mabie Todd was a company that went defunct many years ago. Fountain Pen Hospital in New York acquired the rights to use the name, and they came out with a series of limited edition pens bearing the name. So this there are only 100 made of each of these pens. So this finish here is called the Concerto, and this finish here is called the Majestic. Other than the finish, the pens are the same. So the Concerto has some really pretty material. It's sort of like acrylic gold, brown colored acrylic chunks with some sort of nice chatoyancy in a black base. It looks just super nice. The Majestic is a very different finish, sort of purplish pink with aqua colored swirls in it and lots of chatoyancy all over. Really pretty finish. Both pens have the identical clip, which is sort of a swooping shaped clip that is sort of somewhat standard and quite functional. Each of the pens has the clip band and the cap band and the band at the base are identical. They sort of have a Greek scrollwork pattern, a Greek style scrollwork pattern on them. The pens both unscrew. They do take 3 1/4 turns to unscrew, which is really quite a bit, and they also are screw to post, and to fully screw it on the post is also 3 1/4 turns. So there's an awful lot of turning going on here, both screw to post and to cap and uncap the pen. So there's an awful lot of that going on here with that. The bottom and the top of the pen are completely flat. Otherwise, the section in both cases is identical to the rest of the pen, which is quite nice. So that you're talking about some very attractive looking sections, etc. The pen features a Schmidt nib with a Schmidt nib unit. So if you want to replace the nib, you can replace it with a Schmidt nib. Anything that's compatible with a Schmidt nib unit. This one happens to have a fine point Schmidt nib, so it's got a big F for fine, a whole bunch of scrollwork, and it says Schmidt Iridium Point, and the Majestic has the identical nib in medium. It is a cartridge converter pen. I do think you could probably, no, you couldn't, there's metal here, so you would not want to eyedropper this. But it did come with a converter included. Now, there were only 100 made of each of these, so the sort of original issue is you can't buy that anymore, but you definitely could probably find these on the secondary market if you so desired. Both pens have Mabie Todd and Company sort of etched, so you can actually feel the etching. So it's sort of etched onto the pen, and then the etching is sort of filled in, and it actually looks quite nice. And I like both the typeface and the way that this was done is actually done quite nicely. Very attractive material on both these pens. So these are real lookers, both of them. So both these pens are pretty chunky in terms of girth, but in terms of length, they're not hugely long. They're only a tiny bit longer than a Lamy Safari or a Pilot Metropolitan. They do, because they're pretty chunky, they do have a decent amount of weight. They both weigh 36 grams. Now, I know what you're thinking. Pens were meant to write. How do these pens write? We're going to find that out right now. Okay, folks, what we're writing with here is a Mabie Todd Concerto, and the other pen was called the Majestic. Whoop. So the only difference in the two pens, like I said, is the finish. And this has a fine steel Schmidt nib. And this writes very well, as you would expect a Schmidt nib to write. This nib, though, is quite fine. For a German nib, you'd expect it to actually be a bit broader than this, I'm guessing. But like I said, quite fine nib indeed. Probably a little too fine for my taste. I mean, I do prefer my nibs a bit broader, but again, this writes really well. It's got some nice flow. It's quite smooth. Writes nicely. Really a nice writer. In terms of line variation, not much really at all. This is not a flex nib, but other than that, it really is a pleasant nib to write with. This is a pretty beefy section, but it's comfortable. I'm using it posted here. You could use it unposted. I'm not seeing any back weighting issues at all. It is a big pen, but it's a comfortable big pen, and I like it. I like it quite a bit. So that about covers this pen. Let's talk about this ink a bit, shall we? So this ink is Colorverse Jupiter Flyby. And this is sort of basically a nice brown. Don't have too much other way to describe it. So this ink was part of this box set, which I did a full unboxing of this on a previous episode, but it's a box set that comes as a set of 4 inks. These are small bottles of ink that you get here. So you can see here's the Jupiter Flyby. It's a small little 15 mil bottle. This is a very small bottle. This bottle is so small, in fact, I could not actually immerse this nib in this section into the bottle to fill it. I had to fill it by taking out the converter. So just these, if you have a substantial size pen like this, you won't be able to fill them from these small bottles. You run the same issue if you have a big thick pen. You want to fill it from a sample vial, etc. I mean, these are not much bigger than sort of a sample vial has 5 or 8 mil. This will have 15. So there you go. So that is this is part of the set. I do not believe you can buy this color individually at all. So that's what this Colorverse Jupiter Flyby looks like on Rhodia paper. Let's just take a quick look at how it might look on Tomoe River paper so we can get a fuller picture of what this ink might do. So this here is also, like we said, is Colorverse Jupiter Flyby. And it's a very nice sort of saturated brown. It looks reddish brown when you first lay it down, but as it dries, and even just in this very sort of short period of time, it really just sort of coalesces to sort of a standard sort of cocoa type chocolatey brown. Not a ton of shading or anything like that on here. It's sort of a fairly basic ink, but even on this Tomoe River paper, which is notorious for having being slow to dry, it's drying quite quickly and not getting really any bleed through on the paper, which is also quite nice. I think that will pretty much do it for this episode. What do we think? Yeah, I think so. So I hope you enjoyed it. As always, if you enjoyed it, please subscribe. Please leave comments. Keep those thumbs up coming. And as usual, until we see each other again, have a great day. Bye-bye.